You are listening to Veggie Doctor Radio, and this is episode number 245. Welcome to Veggie Doctor Radio. I am your host, Dr. Yami, board-certified pediatrician, certified lifestyle medicine physician, certified health and wellness coach, author, speaker, mother, wife, and human being. I passionately believe in the power of diet, habits, and mindset in sparking and sustaining well-being and joy in our lives. This podcast combines expert interviews and thoughtful monologues to explore plant-based nutrition, lifestyle medicine, parenting, mindset, and other exciting and fun topics. I hope that these episodes inspire you, uplift you, and equip you with the knowledge and tools to live your best life. Are you ready to get started? Let's do it. Hey, veggie lovers. I have a fantastic episode for y'all today, one that is filled with authenticity and honesty. It's so refreshing. It's such a good conversation. I left this conversation with such a good feeling in my heart, and just that feeling of understanding some things, some aspects of how we relate to ourselves in the world. This episode, I had my guest, Dr. Minil Patel, and he is a general practice specialty registrar from London. He graduated from King's College, London, with an MBBS and a BSc with honors in neuroscience in 2016. A vegan since 2017, he has a keen interest in plant-based nutrition, health and fitness, and the power of lifestyle medicine in the treatment and prevention of chronic disease. He has completed the plant-based nutrition course at the University of Winchester, has a PG cert in medical education from King's College London, and is a member of Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. He has a background in powerlifting and strength training and does bodybuilding style resistance training in his spare time, earning him a feature in Men's Health Online. We definitely talk about that. He balances his day-to-day work as a GP registrar whilst also teaching others about plant-based nutrition, fitness, and veganism using social media. Here, he also shows wonderful plant-based recipes to help power his active lifestyle and shows people you really can build muscle without the need for animal products. And the reason I say that this episode has so much honesty is because Dr. Patel's story of how he discovered and transitioned into veganism is such a good one that involved arguing online. It is such a great story. I love it. The irony of it is great. I think you're going to enjoy hearing about that. We talk about how his way of eating has influenced his friends and family. We talk about his fitness journey from powerlifting to bodybuilding. If it's been difficult for him to pursue bodybuilding as a vegan, has that held him back? We talk about what a day of eating looks like for him. We talk about protein. One of the intentions of this episode was to focus a little bit on protein and different perspectives on protein intake. So we talk about that. We also talk about common myths and misconceptions about protein that he has encountered. And we get into body image as a vegan and a plant-based eater, but also body image as a bodybuilder, somebody that got featured in a magazine with all the muscles defined. We talk about how has that impacted him? Was it difficult to get to that point where his body looked a certain way? And I asked him, was it worth it? Would he do it again? So you're going to have to listen to the episode to hear his answer. So this is a great episode. I do want to give a trigger warning. So if you are struggling with body image, if you are triggered by any talk about calories, restriction, definitely do not listen to this episode. This is definitely not for anybody that is struggling with disordered eating, body image, or any of that. Please go ahead and navigate away from this episode because we do touch on those subjects. Like I said, it's a very honest, authentic conversation about some of these issues. It's very interesting. It's not promoting dieting or restriction, but we do have an honest conversation about it. So if you are in a vulnerable place, this is not the right time for you to listen to this episode. But otherwise, I think that you're really going to enjoy this. For my longtime listeners, thank you for being here. New listeners, welcome. Make yourself at home. Enjoy. I hope you listen to some of the other episodes and love it. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being there to listen to these episodes, allow me to do something that I so passionately love. And now let's welcome Dr. Minil Patel. Dr. Minil Patel, welcome to Veggie Doctor Radio. What a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you for having me.
So I am so glad that I found you, and it looks like you're friends with some of my virtual friends, although I have met them in person because I was in London over the summer. So I met the Bajacles. They're even better in person than virtually. So I'm glad that you get to run in all of the cool vegan circles.
Did they spoil you as well when you came over? Did they spoil you as well?
Oh, yeah. I got chocolate. I got books. I got all kinds of stuff. So
amazing.
It was great. So I want to hear about you, though. Tell us about your vegan journey. How did you discover veganism and decide to adopt a plant-based diet?
Yeah, so this is a pretty funny story and quite interesting as well. And I never get tired of telling it because I'm probably the last person on earth that people would think would go vegan. Like I used to eat a ton of meats, and I'm not proud of it, but I think it's something that people should know because it just shows that anyone can get find his way and come on this journey. When I was younger, even though I grew up in a vegetarian household, men tended to eat meat and I tended to eat meat. And then when I went to like high school or secondary school, we call it here, I started. It was an all boys secondary school, so I was surrounded by other guys, and you kind of get this feeling that it's macho to eat meat. So yeah, I was eating a lot, and I didn't even think about what I was consuming really. The veganism was the last thing on my mind. I thought of it as kind of, I could never go vegan, is what I used to say. And then sometime in 2016, a few of my friends were going greyhound racing, like dog racing. I don't know if you guys have much of that there, but it's quite big in the UK. It's kind of dying out, but it still happens. And I said, I don't want to come. I'm not comfortable with it. It doesn't sound very ethical. I don't want to be there. So I didn't go. But when I said that in front of them, one of their girlfriends kind of said, "But don't you eat meat?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I do eat meat." But I hadn't really thought about kind of the concept of the fact that I'm saying no to doing this on ethical grounds, but yeah, I'm consuming animal products all the time without really thinking about where they come from and stuff. So yeah, I kind of got me thinking, but still didn't go vegan. And then towards the end of 2016, I was debating this vegan online. Like, you get into these online arguments and discussions, and I found myself agreeing with her kind of a lot. And I couldn't really argue my case really, especially on the ethical grounds and the environment and things. I really didn't have a leg to stand on. And then sometime in 2017, I actually ended up dating this person. And she took me to she took me to vegan restaurants, and I'll try vegan foods, and I was still eating animal products, but I kind of got kind of introduced to that kind of lifestyle. But what really hit it was when I went to an animal sanctuary with her. And I kind of saw these animals that were rescued, and we volunteered there for the day, making kind of like making the beds for them and feeding them and things. And I was like, these animals have been rescued from people like me, and it kind of hit me there and then, and I was like, damn, am I gonna have to think about going vegan? So I went home and I was like, maybe I'm gonna have to think about going vegan. And then I get sent a video by Gary Yourofsky, The Greatest Speech You'll Ever Hear, and I watched that, and that was it for me. Overnight, on July 7th, 2017, I decided to just go vegan overnight and haven't looked back since. Yeah, so that's how I came onto the veganism side of things.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, but the plant-based diet part of it, I think, came a bit later. Because I think when I went vegan, I was eating a lot more of the processed vegan foods, like the mock meats and things. I was pretty much replacing that in my diet. That's what I was doing. It just took out the meat and replaced it with the seitan or like really processed soy stuff. Which, I mean, it tasted good, and it kind of allowed me to transition like over to a plant-based diet. But then I really learned more about plant-based nutrition when I kind of got involved with plant-based health professionals in the UK. Kind of went to a conference, the first kind of plant-based diet conference in the UK as well, called VegMed. It was an international conference, so we actually had people from the States over. I think Dr. Neil Barnard was there, Dr. Michael Greger was there, and a few other people. So, just learning more about nutrition kind of came that way, and I got more and more into plant-based nutrition, and then that kind of brought me onto lifestyle medicine as well, because it's such an important aspect of lifestyle medicine is actually what we're eating, and how what we're eating can really help promote health and reverse chronic diseases as well.
Wow, what a beautiful story. And my heart kind of broke whenever you had that realization where you were at the farm sanctuary and you're like, oh my gosh, are these animals being saved from people like me? You're like, I'm part of the problem.
Literally.
Do you feel like there's a part of you that's always been inclined towards that, but since you were kind of saturated, especially with the boys' school and the culture around you of eating meat, that you were kind of denying it, or you had cognitive dissonance around it? Or do you really feel like it has been an evolution in your personality to get to the point where it's enough of a value for you that you're willing to change the way you eat?
I think it's a bit of both, really. I think I've always been an animal lover, and I always used to say that I loved animals, so I guess it was easier for me to empathize with them, because I always, I grew up kind of watching things like Jungle Book and Tarzan and wanting to be there in the jungle with the animals. All my favorite movies growing up were like animal related, so there was always something there that I had a sort of kinship with animals already. I was, if I went to a house and there's a pet there, I'd be the first person on the floor playing with the dog. So I always had that, being able to relate to them. But I think definitely as I've evolved as a person, thinking about my impact has definitely kind of allowed me to go beyond that cognitive dissonance that I did once have, because I once was able to say I'm an animal lover while sitting in front with the steak in front of me. I was still able to do that, which takes a great level of cognitive dissonance to do that, right? I think only when I really challenged the views I had at the animal sanctuary after watching that video by Gary Yoffsky, only when you sit there and think, are my actions aligned with my morals, with what I believe and what I think is right? And they didn't, and I had quite an emotional way into veganism, actually. When my response to the video by Gary Yoffsky was tears. I cried for about 20 minutes. And that's the truth. And I couldn't kind of then think, I couldn't really face myself thinking, if I had that reaction to something so visceral, such a reaction to this, how can I then go back? So yeah, I think it was a bit of both. There's something in me, but then it has been an evolution as well.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that argument that you were having online about, I'm assuming you're arguing the pro-meat side. How did you get into that debate?
I think it was just online. Someone posted a silly meme about kind of vegans, and then it turned into a bit of like a, in the comments section, people commenting, and then I started saying, well, the optimal diet for human beings is actually, a high animal-based diet, because, humans used to hunt. We evolved in the plains of Africa, and we used to eat lots of game meat and all this stuff. Not while thinking like we're no longer on the plains of Africa. We're not eating lots of game meat. We're actually farming animals. Billions of animals every year are killed. Environmentally, the impact is huge. You're using such masses of land to do it. Animal agriculture contributes to about, I think, 15 to 20% of all greenhouse gas emissions worldwide. It's the leading cause of deforestation in the rainforest. Of course, I wasn't saying all this at the time. I was saying the total opposite of this, which was that, we need animals for protein. We need. So I was saying at the time we need animals for protein. I have canines. I was comparing myself to a lion. All the common things I hear people say to defend meat eating, when really all I could have said was it tastes good and I like how it tastes. Which is, when I think about it now, pretty selfish way to go about it, you know? I think the only real reason to justify animal products now is if you're living in a place where access to adequate amounts of protein and nutritious food is scarce. So if you're living in these kind of environments, I wouldn't tell these people to go vegan. You could ask them to adopt a more plant-based diet for also other health reasons, but they may need to complement it with animal products in this situation. They can't go vegan. Even ethically, I think if they tried, their health would suffer, they would run into nutritional deficiencies. Things are not set up for these people. But the majority of people living in the world, especially in America, the UK, Australia, like in the West, in Europe, we've got access to a lot more things and we can actually go vegan. So there's no real argument to be made there.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because that comes up so much, right? Like, if you were stranded on a desert island and you only had a pig, would you eat it? Well, probably, yeah, if you're, concerned about your survival, but that's really not the case for the majority of people. The majority of people have access and have the ability, and
Exactly.
We're in a different place now, and we have different priorities. One of them is to protect our planet, but the other one is not just to survive, but to thrive.
Exactly.
And when we're thinking about the difference between those things, yeah, we can survive on all kinds of things. Humans are resilient. We can survive on all kinds of things. But if we want to take the research that has been done, both lab research and observational research, and try to put together something that's actually going to support health, well-being, and longevity, that includes a lot of plants.
Exactly.
And even if it's exclusively plants, I think we could still be thriving compared to a diet that's the standard Western diet, which is high in processed foods and animal products. So
Definitely.
really good points there. So has your way of eating influenced your friends or family?
So interestingly, yes and no. So no, in the sense that my immediate family haven't gone vegan. I thought they would by now, but no, they haven't. So my mother's vegetarian, but my brother and my father, they both eat meat and they both eat animal products. But the thing is, with me going vegan, there's been a lot less animal products coming into the home, which means there's a lot less animal products being eaten in the home, just by virtue of me not bringing them in. So it's had a kind of knock-on effect that way, that they've had to kind of change what they eat at home because of me, which I think is a win. Because they've not complained about it either. They've kind of just gone on with it, and they enjoy my mum's cooking as well, because she cooks Indian food, which is largely vegan, vegetarian anyway. So that's been a plus. But yeah, like my extended family have definitely cut down on their meat consumption. Whether it's through being perceptibly judged by me, or is it whether they actually listen to things I've been saying, which is what I'd like to think anyway. And then kind of friends as well, like two of my really good friends have actually gone vegan as well, which again, one of them was much like me. He, the last person you'd ever think would go vegan. He's a bodybuilder. He was a powerlifter. He owns a successful personal training and transformation company, and even he's gone vegan. Just through kind of discussions about it, thinking about the ethical side of things, about the environment. So yeah, it's been really impressive seeing his journey. And then another one of my friends who's a fellow doctor, he went vegan, and that was really handy because I lived with him during the pandemic, so having to share a kitchen with him was really easy, because he changed his habit as well. And the reason he went vegan was he has a pet cat, and when he was in Vietnam, he saw cats in cages, because of course in some parts of the world they eat cats and they eat dogs, and that's normal for some parts of the world, right? I think when he saw that, for him it was kind of a light bulb moment, kind of like, well, what's the difference between this cat in a cage and a chicken or a cow or a pig? Which is true, right? I mean, what is the difference between all these animals anyway? And if you look at it from a vegan lens, there is no difference. So yeah, it's been interesting. I didn't think anyone would go vegan just off the back of me going vegan, but it seems like it's happened. And then kind of looking on social media as well, I've had people reach out to me saying that they've cut down the animal product intake. Some of them have actually gone vegan, some of them have gone vegetarian at least. So things are moving in the right direction. It's really encouraging to see that kind of the message is getting through to people.
Yeah. I mean, the ripple effect is real. And especially when you're influencing people who then have more influence on other people, it really translates into a lot of change and influence. So
Yeah,
congrats on
exactly.
that. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about powerlifting and bodybuilding. So when did you start powerlifting and bodybuilding? Was it before or after your vegan transition? And has it been difficult for you to pursue these hobbies as a vegan?
Yeah, so actually, I would say I started lifting weights back in, God, I think I was about probably before I turned 18, but I wasn't lifting them with any sort of kind of goal or plan or anything. It was kind of, we had a school gym and I'd go there every now and then to pump a few, pump the biceps a bit, trying to put on a bit of muscle because I was quite a skinny, scrawny kid. And I'm not the tallest person, so I thought if I can't get any taller, I'll have to get wider or something. But really, it was when I went to university actually. So when I went to medical school, I really got into powerlifting. And the aim of powerlifting is to just get as strong as you can, lifting in kind of the one repetition maximum. So you're trying to get as strong as you can to pull off the most weight you can off the floor, squat the most weight, or bench press the most weight. So it's a different type of training to bodybuilding. You're really working in the lower repetition ranges. You're trying to go for maximum power, maximum speed and strength, basically. And yeah, it was really fun. It was really rewarding. I was part of like a group of guys that were doing it. But this was long before I was vegan. So at the time, my nutrition was pretty much animal products, animal products, animal products. And that was like that for the first, I guess, started medical school in about 2010. So yeah, for the first 7 years of when I was lifting, it was pretty much eating animal products. And I really only made the shift towards a more bodybuilding style type of training, probably just before I went vegan, a couple of years before I went vegan. Reason being is I had a bit of an injury setback while I was in university, whilst doing a deadlift. So this is the importance of lifting with proper form. So if anyone, I encourage people to lift and go to the gym, and there's no such thing as there are some unsafe exercises, but most exercises, if done safely and done well, you can prevent injury. But I was lifting, I was tired, I was trying to lift really heavy weight, and I did my back in, and then I think that put me off a bit going back towards powerlifting, which that's just what happened to me personally. So then I kind of started lifting what I called more bodybuilding style, sometime in 2016, and I went vegan actually in 2017 after that. And I guess when I went vegan, I thought, how am I gonna? My main fear was, am I going to be able to continue like building muscle and progressing? And I guess that brings me to the next question, which is, has that been difficult to pursue bodybuilding as a vegan? It was one of the earliest questions I had on my mind, which was, I sat down with one of my friends who was a sports nutritionist, and he was vegan himself actually, and I said, like, I want to do this. This is a few months into being vegan, and I was like, I really want to do this, but like, I don't know if I'll be able to keep building muscle and getting strong, because it was unheard of really in bodybuilding. There were a few people like Nimai Delgado and Patrick Baboumian in strength training that were vegan, but it wasn't like there was lots and lots of vegan bodybuilders to kind of look at. And I thought, these are individual guys. They managed to make it work. Am I going to make it work? I don't know. So it was always playing in my mind. But I thought the main thing to do is have a plan. Really have a plan with how you're going to eat and how you're going to train. Because the most important thing for bodybuilding and for strength training is actually how you train. If your training isn't good enough, then you can eat all the animal products in the world. You can eat all the protein in the world. It's not going to make it any difference, a lick of difference really, if you gain muscle or not. So the training is the main part. So I continued training hard, and that was the main thing, continuing to train hard. And then I really had to plan my diet well, which I think, if you're not really passionate about training and eating right, then that might be more difficult. So if someone is eating animal products, they might find it a bit more easy because it's a bit more convenient. Whereas bodybuilding as a vegan, whilst you're still training as hard, you might have to plan your meals a bit better, especially if you're having to go out. It's not as easy to just pick up a high protein, meal at a restaurant. Sometimes I'll go to a restaurant with friends and the vegan option is a potato dish or a pasta dish, which is great. Don't get me wrong, it tastes great and it's probably really healthy. But is it going to serve me in my goal to gaining muscle when actually I need meal that's quite balanced and a bit higher in protein? Probably not, right? So it's really working around that and planning around that, which is what I found a bit challenging. But, you know, like, despite all of that, I was able to get in kind of the best shape of my life. Like in 2019, one of my friends who's vegan now, but back then he wasn't, he kind of sort of challenged me and said, you know, let's see if you can get in kind of bodybuilding, like stage ready shape on a vegan diet. So I thought, okay, fine. And I managed to do that. And then there was we did a photo shoot, and it ended up getting picked up by Men's Health Online, which, you know, in my wildest dreams, I didn't imagine that I could get on Men's Health. You know, not the main magazine, that would have been amazing, but it was online, and I didn't think that I would ever get on, you know, something so big like that, when, especially as a vegan, you know, even when I was eating animal products, I didn't think I could do it, but managed to do it as a vegan, which just shows that it's not, you know, it doesn't matter if you're vegan or not. The main thing is that you are training hard and eating in the right way to make sure that you build muscle and continue to progress in the gym.
Yeah, and I encourage everybody to go to your Instagram and check those out, because you have the images on your Instagram, right? At Dr. Iron Junkie. Is that what your Instagram handle is? Yeah, it's very impressive. Very impressive, gotta say. I mean, bodybuilding is such an interesting thing, you know, like, wow, it just seems like it's a lot of work. And like you said, you have to put a lot of planning into it. You have to really be deliberate and thoughtful about it. So tell me a little bit more about your experience with protein. I mean, you've mentioned protein a few times. I think in the plant-based community, we're starting to get kind of two extremes in the people that say, you know, you don't have to worry about protein at all, to the people that say you can't get enough protein if you eat beans. So given your personal experience with bodybuilding and building muscle, also knowing that most people are not trying to do that, right? So most people are just trying to get enough calories and protein to just do their regular, like, 30-minute elliptical thing and, you know, do their normal life, right? So most people are not trying to look like a bodybuilder that gets into Men's Health Online. But given what you know, how has your opinion about protein evolved or changed? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually, that question, because you're right, there are two extremes. On one side, you have people saying that protein really doesn't matter, you'll get enough provided you get enough calories, and then you've got the other side saying you need to eat huge amounts. So there are a few kind of, except people know what protein is. You know, it's a macronutrient. It's one of the main three out of fats, carbohydrates, and proteins, the other one that we get in our diet. Protein is made up of a long chain of amino acids, and we need to make sure we get 9 of these amino acids from our diet. They're called essential amino acids. Now, when people set kind of the protein recommendations, the RDA for protein for someone who's quite sedentary, not doing much, is set at 0.8 grams per kilogram, which is quite low if you think about it. But that RDA, people have come to mistake it to mean that's what we should aim for, whereas that RDA was set to prevent deficiency. Okay, so the average person isn't really trying to prevent deficiency here. So when organizations like the World Health Organization set a target of 0.8 grams per kilogram, they're trying to target people where food is scarce, and they're just trying to prevent them from becoming deficient. Obviously, if we're trying to thrive and we're trying to optimize our health, then I personally think we should aim for a bit higher, about at least a gram, if not more, like a gram to 1.2 grams per kilogram body weight. The reason being that we know that protein helps muscle building. We know that, obviously. Protein helps with bone mineral density, so it helps keep your bones strong as we age as well. It's not just needed for muscles, it's needed for other processes in the body as well. So when I was going back to talking about what protein is made up of these amino acids, when you eat protein, you end up breaking them down into these amino acids, and then you absorb them, and then your body knows to make different proteins from the amino acids, right? And as I said, 9 of them are essential amino acids, and we have to get them from our diet. We can't make these. And these essential amino acids, as I said, come from our food. The important one for muscle building is called leucine, right? If you're not eating enough protein, you probably won't get enough of the essential amino acids, which means you probably won't get enough of one of these essential amino acids called leucine, which helps to trigger muscle protein synthesis. So if you're trying to build muscle, if you're an athlete, if you're trying to get stronger for athletic performance, or whether it's being a bodybuilder, then you do need higher levels of protein, and just to make sure that you get enough of the essential amino acids and you get enough of the leucine as well, because you need about 2 to 3 grams of leucine per meal to maximally trigger what we call muscle protein synthesis, and that usually corresponds to a meal of about 20 to 40 grams of protein, depending on your size, which is why we say that if you're trying to build muscle, you should aim for 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight, which sounds quite high, but really it's not that high. For the average person, that's getting about 100 to 120 grams of protein a day, which is not that difficult. On a plant-based diet, you again need to plan it a bit more, so that's what you'd have to do. So say for people that are like just on the elliptical, there's still a benefit of eating slightly higher protein levels, because we know it's muscle sparing. It helps you hang on to muscle. People should be doing resistance exercise anyway. You don't have to be a bodybuilder. I think most health organizations will tell you that whilst also doing cardiovascular exercises, things that work your heart and your lungs, you should be doing some resistance training and strength training a couple times a week to make sure that you're building muscle. Because as we age, we know we lose muscle. Okay, so it's good to have some muscle there beforehand, so that we prevent that frailty as we get older. It also helps load the bones, which prevents things like osteoporosis, which is when your bone density goes down as you age, which increases your risk of fractures. So we know that resistance training can help prevent that as well. And also, getting stronger makes you less frail. You're more likely to be able to be functional as you age as well, which is great. It doesn't just look good, having that extra muscle, but it makes you feel good and actually perform better as well. So I think aiming for slightly higher than that low RDA, 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram, and then if you're an athlete and you're trying to muscle build, then it's between 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight, and that will ensure that you're kind of maximally, or you're optimally at least trying to activate muscle protein synthesis and build that new muscle tissue.
Wonderful. Yes. And I completely agree that we should aim to do resistance training at least twice per week, which is what our guidelines say.
Yeah.
But, if you do more, that's even better, because we know that muscle is one of those big markers of longevity as well. So we want to protect our muscle mass. If we're planning to be here for decades and decades and decades, we want to do what we can. And that's also become very important to me, because I'm 43, and I started realizing kind of once I started hitting that early 40s, I was like, ooh, my body's changing. And I had kind of fallen off with my strength training. So I got back in the gym, and now I'm doing powerlifting myself.
Nice.
And seeing some good improvements. But I feel like the older you are, when you start again, it takes longer to make those gains than when you're younger. So for all of my listeners, just start wherever you are and don't stop. I think the most important thing is consistency. Because if you get in there and you're just like, yeah, I'm going to bulk up and, go for a good 2-3 months. Yeah, it's good. But the most important thing is do whatever you can to be able to maintain a consistency in strength training. Like if you're an all or nothing person, you go in there and you get all sore and injured and you hurt yourself and you drop off, that's not going to be as helpful as, taking it slow, going up slowly. You still want to get that stress on your muscles, but you really want to aim for consistency of this practice of strength training. So thank you for all of that. That was really, really good information. So given that, I'd love to know for you, and I don't know right now if you're doing any training for bodybuilding or you're kind of more focusing on job and stuff right now, but I would love to know what a day of eating looks like for you.
So currently, I guess I'm doing this thing where I'm trying to build muscle slowly. So just going back to the consistency thing, you're right. Like you want to consistently, progressively overload. So you want to progressively get stronger over time. And to do that, you need to make sure you're eating enough calories, enough protein. So at the moment, I'm not really counting my calories or anything like that. I would only really ever do that if I was trying to really diet down for a goal in a short amount of time. So for me, it's mainly just ensuring that I'm getting, as I said, 20 to 40 grams of protein per meal, just to make sure I get my daily target of protein, getting enough carbohydrates and getting enough healthy fats. So I'm a creature of habit when it comes to breakfast. So my breakfast is usually a big bowl of porridge oats with a scoop of plant-based protein in there. Usually I'll sprinkle like some hemp seeds or chia seeds or ground flax seeds in there as well for the healthy fats. Sometimes some peanut butter or almond butter, again for the healthy fats. And a handful of frozen berries. Again, berries are a great source of kind of antioxidants, polyphenols, which helps recovery as well. So, it's a great way to get a really nutritious and protein rich, complex carb rich, fiber rich, and healthy fat rich breakfast is that bowl of porridge in the morning. I tend to eat that after I've trained because I try and train before work because it gets a bit difficult when you're finishing late and things. So I try and train before work and I'll have that for breakfast. And then lunchtime will be, I normally get I always go by a kind of a source of protein, a source of like vegetables, and a source of healthy carbohydrates. So for me, the protein source will be tofu or tempeh, as well as like a handful or a serving of beans, legumes, or lentils. I try get at least 2 servings of legumes a day or more. And then there'll be like a serving of green vegetables, like leafy green vegetables like broccoli or asparagus or kale. And then the carb source will either be like black rice, quinoa, sweet potato. I love sweet potato. So it'll be a serving of a potato of some kind. Usually it's a sweet potato. And then I do tend to have a snack between my lunch and my dinner. I don't tend to snack throughout the day like some people do. I personally don't see the point of doing that. Like, you don't need to keep feeding. We're not rodents, I prefer to eat discrete meals. So it's either breakfast, lunch, and then I used to call it meal 3, but now it's more of a snack, which is it's usually like soy-based yogurt with again, I put like a half scoop of protein in there just to up the protein a little bit. Again, it seems like I'm just using a lot of protein, but when you look at the actual numbers, it's not that much. You're using it as a supplement to supplement the diet. The actual diet, the food is there itself. So the soy yogurt with like a handful of fruit, again a handful of nuts. It's just a little snack to get me through to dinner, which tends to be very similar to lunch. So again, usually it would be like something like a stir fry with whole wheat noodles or wild rice or black rice with lots of vegetables. And then again, the protein source will be something like tofu or tempeh, maybe seitan. Sometimes I use textured vegetable protein as well, which is made of soy. It's like this, I don't know if you've used it, it's like this dehydrated textured soy, which then you kind of rehydrate and then plump up, and then you can put it into any recipe and it's great. And it's a really good hit of protein again. So, make sure I get enough throughout the day. I'm not really counting what I'm eating, kind of because I've been doing this for so long. I tend to be able to look at food and I can tell roughly how much it is. And I kind of gauge it by like how my performance is in the gym. So if I'm getting stronger week on week, if I'm looking different, if I feel like I'm putting on too much body fat, then maybe I'll scale back something a bit. If I feel like I'm not getting stronger, then I'll increase the calories a bit, or kind of have a look at my sleep. So it's become more intuitive now, I guess, than anything else. Whereas I guess when you're starting out, it helps to really plan and know what you're doing, and maybe even hire a coach. I personally have only ever had a coach when I had my friend helping me in 2019, but for most people, having a coach is really good. It's a good way to keep accountable and keep consistent as well. So yeah, that's a typical day of eating.
Yeah. That sounds delicious. I love it. It all sounds wonderful and something that I would definitely eat myself in my routine. And I have used textured vegetable protein, and I actually use it quite a bit because I really like it because it's so convenient. I love that it's shelf stable, and I've actually found it made of different things. So of course, soy is going to be the most common source of textured vegetable protein, but now you can find chickpea and lentil and pea textured vegetable protein. So, and it comes in all kinds of different shapes, and you can use it all different ways. I love it. I love it especially for Taco Tuesday. I get the little meatless crumbles, and there's one that's like a green pea meatless crumbles, and it's dried, but then you rehydrate it, and then you season it just like you would anything else. And it's really convenient for a fast meal when I'm making Taco Tuesday over here. So thanks for bringing that up, because I think that that's like a little hack that I haven't talked about a lot, because I love having those things that are convenient, but also health promoting. And I actually would consider it. I mean, it is something that is made in a factory, but it's a single ingredient. It's only one ingredient. So it's not like it's got all of these additives or anything like that. It's just the way that it's processed to be made more convenient and more dense in protein. So I think that's a good thing to use.
I think
so what are some common myths and Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, one more thing I wanted to add was I don't know if you probably had these as well, like pea and bean-based pastas and spaghetti. So I mean, those are so high in protein and again really high in fiber. Again, they've been processed, but again a single ingredient food, which is usually a lentil flour or a pea flour or bean flour, basically just shaped into a pasta shape, and it holds its shape when you cook it. And again, it's a great way to get fiber. It's a great way to get protein in. And they're quite low on calories as well compared to what they are. They're lower in carbohydrates as well. So if someone is trying to scale back on how many carbohydrates they're eating for whatever reason, this is a great way of getting a high protein and healthy meal as well. So I thought I'd just add that just because you mentioned the pea-based vegetable protein. Yeah.
No, that's great. We have a brand here. I don't know if they have it there in the UK. It's called Banza, Banza, and it's chickpea based. And it's so delicious. And they sell it at some of the big stores like Costco and things like that here. But I also encourage it for parents too, because parents are always worried that their kids are like, quote, carb addicts. I'm not worried about that, but parents are. But if they want, kids love pasta. Most kids will eat pasta. And choosing these different kinds of bean pasta products will also help you get more diversity in the diet. So you're not just getting wheat all the time. You can get the chickpea or the lentil or the black bean pastas, and they're fun. They come in different shapes. You can use different sauces. So it's just another creative way to get more diversity in your child's diet and, different combination of macronutrients there.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So what are some common myths or misconceptions about protein that you encounter?
I feel like this could be like a podcast episode on its own. There's so many myths. Okay, fine. So I guess the one common one we see is that plants don't have protein. Well, you can't get enough protein from plants, which we know is nonsense, because if you eat the right plant foods, you'll get plenty of protein from them. So if you're eating stuff like tofu, tempeh, seitan, textured vegetable protein, these bean-based pastas, you can even get lentil-based rice now as well. So all these things will have a large amount of protein, but then also other plant foods also provide protein, like whole wheat bread, anything that's whole wheat really, things that have seeds in it, nuts. All these things will have protein, so you can easily get enough protein on a plant-based diet. And, even if you wanted to, you could supplement as well. So this is without supplementation. You can get all this stuff easily. The next myth kind of follows on from that one, which is, okay, fine, you can get protein from plants, but it's not complete anyway, and you can't get all the essential amino acids from plants anyway. You can only get it from meat, which is, again, nonsense, because plants contain all essential amino acids. The only thing is that they contain them in varying amounts. So depending on the plant source you're looking at, there may be one amino acid that's slightly lower. It's still there, but slightly lower. That just means that you need to make sure you're eating a variety of plant foods throughout the day to make sure that you're getting all the essential amino acids you need. Okay. So provided you do that, you will get all the essential amino acids. So this myth about plants not containing them is just false. They do contain them, but just in different amounts. That actually brings me to another myth, which is linked to that, which is that you have to combine plant proteins at mealtimes. Again, that's something that was a myth that came from the 1970s. I think it was a French author wrote this, that you have to combine plant proteins at meals. She's since kind of reversed her decision on this as well. So provided this is where the whole myth of eating beans with rice came from, and a lot of cultures do that, just they do it without even thinking about it. It's almost just innate that a lot of cultures will eat a grain and a legume together because they complement each other. So grains tend to be lower in something called lysine, one of the amino acids, and higher in methionine, whereas beans and legumes are higher in the lysine and lower in the methionine. So if you combine the two at mealtime, you get the complete picture. But You don't have to do this. We know that as long as you eat a varied source throughout the day, you will get all the essential amino acids you need. Your body does the rest. Common one I hear about protein again is that too much protein is bad for your kidneys. So this is coming from the low protein camp. They say that you should eat lower protein because if you eat too much protein, it harms your kidneys. Now, again, there's no evidence for this. What evidence we do have is patients with chronic kidney disease or renal failure, they tend to have better health outcomes if they lower their protein intake. So if they are put on a low protein diet, then their progression of renal disease or their progression towards being on dialysis or needing a transplant is lower if they or is slower rather if they're on a lower protein diet. Whereas people with healthy functioning kidneys, no other medical issues, tend to be fine on high protein diets, and even going as high as 3 grams per kilo. Not saying I'm saying you should do that. Doesn't have any negative health benefits. Which brings me to another myth, which is more is better. No, eating more protein is not going to be better for you. There's no protein is not some magical compound that will suddenly make you look like Arnold Schwarzenegger if you eat it. You need to train hard in the gym. That's the main thing. No matter how much protein you eat, if you're not training hard in the gym, it's going to do nothing. You're just going to pee it out. You're not going to do anything with it. You'll absorb it and then your body will use it for something else. If it has no reason to build muscle, then it won't do that. So you need to make sure you're training hard enough and then eat the right amount of protein, which, as we said, is 1.6 grams per kilogram. Beyond that, there's no real significant benefit to consuming more protein. I would say that if you're dieting and in a calorie deficit, so you're eating lower calories, so you're in a state where you need more energy, sometimes increasing that protein intake to about 1.8 to 2.2 grams is better because it helps you hold on to the muscle when dieting. But if you're eating enough calories, you're making sure you're getting enough energy throughout the day, and the aim is to build, 1.6 is fine. Anything above that is just extra. So more is definitely not better in that sense, and making sure you train is the main thing. One last myth, and then we'll stop there, is soy is bad for you. I had to throw that one in there, and I know you've had Dr. Neetu Bachakal on before talking about soy, I think. So I won't go into too much detail, but soy is not bad for you. People say it's bad for you, or bad for men especially, because it contains these things called phytoestrogens. Phytoestrogens are actually everywhere. They're in lots of plant foods. Red wine has phytoestrogen. Resveratrol, the kind of compound that all these people that love red wine keep going on about, that's a phytoestrogen. So if we're gonna demonize soy, we should demonize all these other foods. Oats have phytoestrogens in them. Phytoestrogens are just plant compounds that the structure of it looks similar to mammalian estrogen. That's it. That's why they're called phytoestrogens. There's no other reason. It's because they look and they can weakly bind to estrogen receptors in the body. Now, what they do when they bind is completely different to what normal estrogen does, and they have different effects in the body. Now, what we care about is the health outcomes. So, from everything I've read, populations that consume soy products in normal amounts, especially in Asia, tend to have better health outcomes. They have lower rates of heart disease. They have it has lower cholesterol lowering effects as well, and it's actually part of the portfolio diet to lower cholesterol. So we know soy is good for you there. It has it's been shown to have lower risk of prostate cancer in people that consume soy, increased breast cancer survival rates. So there's lots of positives that we can see with consuming soy products, and we think this may be coming from the phytoestrogens. There certainly is no negative aspect of consuming these phytoestrogens in normal amounts. So men are not going to get low testosterone from it. There's no studies that show that. They're not going to develop gynecomastia or male breast tissue. It's not going to happen unless you're consuming, I think there was one case study where someone was consuming about 4 liters of soy milk, and he just happened to develop breast tissue. It was one case study, and from that case study has come so many different articles just with this perpetual myth about the negative aspects of soy, and it's really unfairly demonized because most vegans have been consuming soy for ages, and Asia, China, Japan, and other countries around that area have been consuming soy for thousands of years with no detriment. So it's definitely not the demon that it's made out to be. But yeah, lots of myths.
Yeah, that's such good information. And just for people to know that case studies are not controlled trials.
No.
And they have lots of variables and lots of confounding factors. So we can't really draw effective
conclusion.
conclusions from case studies anyway, because there could have been other things. Now we know
Loads.
that actually things like lavender, topical lavender for some people, for some children, can actually result in breast tissue too. So there's things that you could be doing in your environment that could be affecting you, not the soy, and definitely not the more whole forms of soy, the minimally processed forms of soy, in amounts that a typical human would consume them. So you're doing, something extreme, which there's always going to be one person or another, like that one lady that was drinking gallons and gallons and gallons of broccoli juice, and it led to problems. So, but yeah, I wanted to go really quick back to one of the other myths that you were talking about, which you addressed earlier in the episode as well, which is, yes, protein is important. Protein matters. But if you're trying to build muscle, you can't just eat protein and expect your muscles are going to get bigger. And I'll say, as a pediatrician, I have lots of adorable teen boys that come to me and they're like, Dr. Yami, I want to build muscle. Tell me how much protein I need to eat. My first question is, are you lifting weights? And usually they're like, well, I'm gonna start going to the gym. I plan to start next month. And I was like, okay, well, that's the first step. Start lifting the weights first. So I love it how the teen boys, they get super excited and their first focus is like, how do I get more protein? But they're not actually, doing the resistance training yet.
I was the same. I still remember the first protein shake I bought. I drank that. It was terrible. I was like 16 years old. I drank it. I was not training hard enough to be drinking that stuff. There was no need. And I was eating so many animal products. I was eating so much protein. There was no point. So more is definitely not better. Sometimes less is more. Sometimes less is more.
Yeah. Yes. And you gotta lift the weights. Okay.
Exactly.
So let's transition real quick into a topic that, might be a little bit more difficult, but I just kind of want to address the reality of the situation, and that's body image. And obviously your pictures are amazing, and you were able to take your body to a place that is not a typical thing, right? Like, people aren't just walking around like this normally without having to put a lot of effort and thought and persistence into it. So I can imagine that spending so much time focusing on this may have some effects on the way that you see yourself. So I'm just curious about your journey with body image and being a bodybuilder and being in the plant-based community. Has it ever been a struggle for you?
Yeah, hugely. It's such a good question, and it's as you said, it's really interesting. And you're right. When a bodybuilder, any bodybuilder, pushes himself to that place, it's an extreme. It's definitely a place where you don't want to be there for too long. Getting there is a difficult journey because you spent all this time building the muscle, and then to strip the fat away to show it, you have to diet for a long period of time. You're kind of depriving your body of food, essentially. You're restricting yourself so much of calories, whilst also training just as hard in the gym to keep the muscle there, whilst also doing extra cardiovascular activity and walking around to try and burn extra energy to lose body fat. So you're really doing something that the body does not want to do, and the body responds in a way which it tells you it really doesn't like it. So personally, I'll talk about my experience. I wasn't able to get, the first 6, it was a 13-week process for me to get that lean. The first 6 weeks were fine because I was, I had enough body fat to get me feeling okay. And then as soon as it started getting what I would call a bit freakish, I'm talking about myself, so that's fine. It was, my sleep was suffering. So I was waking up middle of the night, probably looking for food. Like my mind was probably thinking, you need to go eat something. But I was waking up and trying to get back to sleep, struggling with that. I was cold all the time. I did this in the middle of July over here, where it's summer and the temperature is like over 20 degrees Celsius. So it's quite warm, but I was freezing. I was always in a hoodie. I was always cold. And even in August, where it was the height of our summer, I was freezing cold because I didn't have any body fat, because my thyroid function was probably really bad as well. I didn't get it tested at the time, but it was probably really bad. Libido goes, right through the floor. You're not, sex is the last thing on your mind when you're in that state. It's not a healthy place to be. So that's the physical sides of it. But then, as you were talking about, kind of the body image of it as well. It's like when you see yourself in the mirror and you see your body look the way it does, you can't help but think, wow, like, I look like a bit of a superhero right now. And then coming out of that and actually having to gain body fat back because you have to, because that's what's going to be healthy for you. It really plays on your mind because you think, oh, I don't look like how I did anymore. And you never really see yourself the same way again. And that takes a long time to kind of come to terms with the fact that you can't stay looking like you did. You can't stay looking like, with veins everywhere and like really cut 6-pack abs because you didn't feel good during that time. Your body wasn't healthy during that time. So I would tell listeners to like kind of be aware when they're, when they're scrolling on social media and they're looking at kind of bodybuilders looking the way they do. It's impressive, sure, but don't think for a second that they are super healthy and super happy with at the time when they've taken those photos. A lot of them aren't. Some people use performance enhancing drugs as well, which, it's the industry, and as long as people are open about it and using them safely, then fine, that's their business. But I don't promote it because obviously there are so many negative health aspects towards using performance enhancing drugs. But, what drives them there is usually that desire to look that way. And, a lot of people scrolling for social media will do anything sometimes to look that way. And what I would say is be careful of how you kind of think about someone's health by just judging what they look like. Because when I was that, ripped 6-pack, I wouldn't call myself healthy at the time. I was actually really weak as well. When you've dieted that hard, you start losing muscle strength as well. So if your aim is to thrive and be really good at performing athletically, peak bodybuilding condition is the worst time for that, for health wise. And then of course it plays into yourself of how you look. And then, as I said, when I was coming out of it, I never really looked at myself the same way. And it's interesting when you think about how others view you as well, because other people would see my photo and be really impressed by it, and they kind of, you get that positive feedback, that positive affirmation that you look good, which makes you think, well, if I don't look like that, when I look the way I look now, will people really care about what I have to say? Will people want to listen to me? Will people value me? You're almost ascribing value to your physical appearance, and it really messes with your head. And if you're not someone that is able to reflect on these things, either through journaling or talking about it, then you can really suffer. Your mental health can really suffer. You can get really bad body image issues, and you never really are able to accept yourself because you're constantly thinking that people are judging you for how you look. And people do that inadvertently speak and talk about your appearance, right? Like, when you're looking in shape, people say, wow, you look in shape. Or when you haven't been going to the gym for a while, people will be like, oh, what happened? Did you stop training? Or I thought you go to the gym, and people will judge you off how you look. And I think for being vegan as well, there's an extra kind of, not baggage, but almost like extra weight that comes with it, that you want to kind of portray yourself as someone who is healthy and vital and looks good as well. Almost because you're a bastion or a steward for veganism. You're trying to like promote this healthy diet, which it is. It's a great lifestyle and it's a great healthy diet. But if you're not looking how someone might think a healthy person should look, you might get judged as well. So that's also another interesting kind of extra aspect to the whole bodybuilding, body image issues as well. The fact that I'm vegan as well. When if I don't look a certain way, if I don't look good enough, people might say, oh, it's because he's vegan. That's why he hasn't got the muscle. It definitely does play into my head sometimes, and you kind of have to just be like, block it all out and look at the reality of things, which is, look, I'm on my journey. This is my personal journey. I know more about myself than anyone ever will, and what I have to say and what value I can bring otherwise is more important than how I look. So yeah, it's definitely been a journey of kind of a lot of self-reflection and kind of just coming to terms with all of it as well. But yeah, it's an interesting question.
Yeah, my goodness, thank you so much for being so honest and vulnerable, because I know that this is a complex topic with so many different layers. And I just really appreciate your honesty, because it's something that I suspected that a lot of people don't talk about, but it's very similar to how I felt going through my disordered eating years. But there's even more pressure, I think, as a bodybuilder. But I think it's so ironic what you were talking about is like, oh my gosh, you look like this ripped action figure superhero. And obviously part of that is this portrayal of sexuality, right? Like this masculinity, virility. But then you're like, my body fat's so low, I have such low calorie intake that I don't even have sex.
Yeah.
You know, like, isn't that ironic?
It was literally, I laughed a good while about, I'm going to, I don't mind sharing this. At the time, it was like, I look so good, but no one's going to get to see this. No one's going to get to see this because I don't want them to see this. Like, I'm not going to, you know, it was really funny. I was like, I guess this is just for me.
You just want to get in bed with a blanket.
I just want to be warm.
You know, like a big bowl of rice. You just want to make love to a big bowl of rice, right?
any food at that point. It was, I think the disordered eating that you brought up is an important part of it as well, because the kind of the body dysmorphia, the bodybuilding definitely goes hand in hand with a disordered form of eating. You know, you're constantly looking at food, you're constantly looking at labels, you're thinking, is this healthy? You become so food focused, you're kind of always just focusing on your neck because you're so hungry. Your hunger signals are all over the place. You're constantly just thinking about food, but then at the same time you're like, oh, I don't want to put on. It's definitely a disordered form of eating. You know, it's not. I think it's starting to get talked about more now, which is really good, because, you know, at the same, you know, we're trying to promote health and fitness to people because we know it's a pillar of lifestyle medicine. You know, movement, physical activity, healthy nutrition is a pillar of lifestyle medicine. But you can't then say that, you know, being a bodybuilder or getting that sort of shape is going to be good for people, you know. So I don't recommend people aim to get in that sort of shape. I think it's a sport, and if you want to do it, then hey, go for it. But just know what you're getting into and have a plan, just so you don't suffer when you're doing it. Because if you're getting in there without a plan in place, it's a recipe for disaster, really.
Do you have any regrets about it at all?
Oh no, definitely not. Because it taught me so much, I guess.
You're like, despite all that, I'm still glad I did it. I think, for me, I think it was, I always wanted to see like how far I could push it. And it's weird because I think I could have pushed it further. But we had like a deadline for the photo shoot, and it came, and I was like, okay, fine, we're doing it, that's it. And then it was over, and then it was coming out of that, which was the hardest part, actually. So definitely have no regrets, because it taught me a lot more about kind of... How low did your body fat percentage get?
So we never really measured it with a DEXA scan, which is the most accurate way of measuring. I never really used that. But on calipers, I think, like, I was getting readings of like, I think like 3 millimeters and stuff. It was basically the back of my hand, how thin that skin is there. That's how thin it was pretty much everywhere except for my like glutes and lower back, which is the hardest place to lose it from, which is when you're doing it naturally as well, it's really difficult, you know. And, you know, I think I've only seen one of my friends get in better shape in terms of how lean he was. He was even leaner. Like, he had striations going down his glute muscles, which was just crazy. So I stopped a few weeks shy of that.
God.
But yeah, it's just not, like I said, it's visually, it's person. It's just the furthest thing from what you'd want to do, really. And yeah, it's definitely no regrets, because it was an interesting experience. You're kind of alone a lot with your thoughts. A lot of time spent kind of walking and exercising, and kind of you're very focused on this one goal as well. So I learned a lot from it. So I think it was definitely a good experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's such good insight. And I was thinking as you were talking about it, that I feel like, I mean, if people want to do this, I really think that they should think about it like an extreme sport. Just like if you're base jumping or free soloing or any of those things. Like, yes, there's people in this world that want to do those extreme sports, but we have to understand that it comes with a large amount of risk as well. It's not like climbing mountains without ropes is not a safe or normal thing to do. And so trying to get down to these like super low body fat percentages, yes, as humans, we can do it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this is an ideal or healthy thing to do, especially like you were saying, staying there. Like nobody would expect you to stay there because you would probably just go crazy, you know, like it would at some point you'd probably just start ripping into bags of food, you know, like because your body's starving, you don't have enough body fat, you know? So I think that was such good insight. And I'm so glad that you were able to be so honest and vulnerable about it.
Yeah, no worries.
So let's wrap it up. This has been such a great conversation. I would love to know, what do you wish more people knew?
So I'll answer this in two ways, because I wish more people knew something about when it comes to veganism, and then we'll do one about muscle building as well. So I think when it comes to veganism, I wish more people knew how to do it in a healthy way, so that they were able to stick to it. So a lot of people end up going vegan and they struggle with it because they don't know what to eat. They don't supplement intelligently. They don't eat enough of the right things, and then they suffer. Their health suffers. They feel awful, and then they end up quitting, and they blame veganism for it. When really it was a lack of education on how to do it properly. So I guess what I wish more people knew is, if you're gonna go vegan, great, but please educate yourself on how to do it safely and properly, to optimize your diet in a way that's going to be healthy for you. And better for you in the long term as well. You know, don't rush into it, make any kind of, you know, I think a lot of people do rush into it and then they kind of fall off. Whereas I think people should take it more as this is a long-term approach, learn more about it, speak to experts if you want to, speak to people that have been doing it for years, and really approach it from a point of view that I want to learn as much as I can about it to make sure I do it in the best way. So that's why I wish more people knew about veganism. When it came to muscle building, I think I wish more people, including myself back in the day, I wish more people knew actually how to train to build muscle. They feel like they haven't got time to go to the gym, but when they go, they're kind of wasting their time, which is why they may not even see results, because they're just kind of doing stuff in there without a clue, which is, you know, no disrespect to them. It's difficult. It's a new skill. You should kind of really learn how to do it properly. Either get guided by a personal trainer or a friend who's been doing it for ages that knows what they're talking about. But again, it's about education, knowing what to do in the gym to make sure that you get the maximum results, by putting in the minimum time needed as well. And again, staying consistent, you know, being realistic with your goals as well. A lot of people think when they go to the gym in a couple of weeks, they're going to come out looking like Superman, when really it takes years and years to build good. That it's the long game, being consistent and actually training correctly with good form to stay injury free and healthy. And that way the gym can be a really good tool to stay healthy for longer as well.
I love that. That is so wise to say that. And that is something that I just only recently actually truly understood. Now, I will say that genetically, my body has the ability to put on muscle pretty fast. And especially the younger I was, I could put on muscle very quickly. And now that I'm older, it's taking a little bit longer. But I kind of was under the impression that I would have bigger changes faster. And now I realize that it is about having patience and consistency, and it will come if you keep putting in the work, but you can't give up. That's the problem. You can't give up and keep restarting, and because you're going to lose it and then you have to come back and build it again. But working with my strength and conditioning coach, I've realized it has taken him like a decade to get to lifting what he can lift. It's not like something that just happens in 6 months, even like 10 years. So, you know, it's one of those things that you really have to be thinking about the long-term goals that you have and what you're wanting, you know, for your body and your longevity. So that's really great. Well, Dr. Patel, you're fabulous. I just have loved learning from you. Yeah. Thank you for giving us information. Thank you for giving us your story and for also being open with us. I would love to know where my listeners can connect with you and learn more about you.
Junkie. Don't ask me about the name. I came up with it when I was like 18 and it's stuck. There's no way back now. So Dr. Iron Junkie. And it's spelled exactly how it sounds on Instagram and on Twitter as well. You can find me there. And
Okay.
I'm open to messages if you really want some advice as well. So yeah.
Love it. Okay, so last question. Leave us with your number one tip for vegans that want to build muscle.
Number one tip for vegan. I guess you've got to train hard enough. You have to give all the plant-based protein and supplements in the world. It's not going to do anything. So train hard enough and give the muscle the reason to grow.
I love it. Oh, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for your time. I'm keeping you up late. You need to get your rest. So thank you so much for everything. I appreciate everything you do and for sharing your story. And I hope that you have a very plantastic night and then also a very plantastic day tomorrow.
Thank you so much. It's a great conversation. Thanks for having me.
Hey, veggie lover, I hope that you loved today's episode. Will you take a second and do me a huge favor? Please subscribe to my podcast so that you never miss an episode. You're the reason I'm here, and I want to share it all with you. Thank you for listening and have a plantastic day.